and welcome to The Executive Appeal, a show that convenes the world's most powerful and successful leaders to share mentoring and career advancement advice to help you successfully transition into senior level executive positions. I'm your host, Alex Trimble, award-winning speaker, author, and leadership expert with over a decade of experience coaching and advising some of our nation's most senior level government leaders. So if you're ready to reach your goals, let's get started. How are you doing today, kind sir? I am so excited to be here with you. But let's do a real quick welcome. Welcome, ambitious leaders everywhere. Another power-packed episode of the Executive Appeal Podcast. I am your host, Alex Trimble, and I am thrilled to have you join us today. This podcast is where we go beyond the ordinary, moving past the cliches of just work hard to actually overcome and uncover the true secrets of successful career management and life management to get to those executive level positions. Now, before we dive into today's conversation, I have some exciting news for you. Again, thanks to your incredible support, the Executive Appeal is now and has been one of the top 5% most popular shows in the world. And this didn't happen by accident, to make this clear. It was you. It was you who made this happen. It will be you who determines the continued success of this show. So please, here's our call to action for all of our amazing listeners. If you enjoy this content we bring to you each and every month, please, we do ask you to do us a favor, click that like button, share your thoughts in your questions in the comments section, and most importantly, share this episode with at least 2 friends or colleagues today. Your engagement and enthusiasm is what keeps this community thriving, and we couldn't be more grateful to have you with us on this journey. So if you're seeking an engaging and motivational time, you are in the right place. We are going to do some magnificent stuff today. And let me say, with no further ado, today is a good day. See, today we have the always amazing, awesome, cool, funny, hilarious, great beard, facial hair. I'm loving it. Mr. Michael Raimondi. Michael currently serves as the Vice President of HR Operations for the Hollister Group, a woman-owned staffing consultancy built around 4 core values: open communication, passion, integrity, and community. And prior to his role in serving in this spectacular position in the organization, he has held a number of leadership positions within organizations such as, I've been waiting to say this, I really want to say this right, Le Cordon Bleu College. I'm probably messing that up. He'll call me out on that one. Or you could say Le Carbon Blue College and West Elm Variety. How are you doing today, kind sir?
I am great, Alex. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
So feel free to call me out. I was trying to, when I saw the name of that place, I was like, okay, I'm going to do my best to pronounce this correctly. Was it pronounced at least in the same?
Yeah. So Cordon Bleu, I'm not gonna do a terrible French accent. I think you did a better one than I could do. But famously, a French culinary college, and Julia Childs, I believe, made it famous.
Yes.
In France, and then there was a whole group of schools in the United States and all over the world, and some really that was a fun time in my career to be working with students directly, and the arts, like students who are passionate about the arts. They're a special kind, and people don't think of cooking as art a lot of times, but it absolutely is. And it's a field of passion. And, who doesn't have a story about food that relates to like their family or their friends? Or food is it tugs on your emotions. So students who are trying to learn that for a career is huge. So yeah, I did a stint of working in admissions at Le Cordon Bleu, and it was a really fun time.
I'll tell you, I'm generally speaking, I know you work at an organization that integrity is very high. So I know you would never do this, but I feel like I would be tempted if I managed a program like that. I'd be like, you know what, it you almost had it. Let's try it again. I would just keep asking to try it again. If it tastes good, I keep eating it. Like, you almost got it. It's almost there. Let's one more time.
We really ate very well there. The students are very good to us, and I'm actually, my wife is an excellent cook. I am not much in the kitchen, and so that was actually the integrity part of the job, was like having to explain to people that I'm actually not a great cook, and
Mm.
students typically exceed my cooking ability within their first couple weeks of being there. So that was always interesting too.
Well, we've started off talking about the food, which is always a favorite place, especially if you're. I mean, honestly, I think across the world, food is always a great device to commune people and bring people together. So I wouldn't just say American. Um, uh, and I'd love to talk to you about what are you doing now? What's going on in your world right now?
Yeah, so right now I'm the head of human resources and talent acquisition at our staffing organization, the Hollister Group. So we're a national firm who is headquartered in Boston, and we focus on a few different verticals for placing talented folks, people in the administrative and office space, accounting and finance, and technology. Um, and what I do is I manage the internal human resources, technology, and talent acquisition process for the organization. Previously had been trained as a recruiter and eventually a salesperson. And then usually the way I describe how I ended up where I am now is by talking about COVID being kind of the great, especially in human resources, anyone who's people facing now probably experienced this. It was it was the great equalizer in our field
Mm,
because no one had been here before, and so everyone was learning about how to manage everyone going remote, how to manage any sort of regulations that we had to pay attention to, and how do we manage space now, and how do we manage when people do come to the office or when they don't, and so that because we're a smaller organization who interfaces with a lot of very large organizations who count on us to provide them with timely information. I kind of took it upon myself to be the guru with everything internally and externally, and so that was really like my catapult into this role. But I had been a leader at the organization previously, managing a group of recruiters and interfacing with a lot of our clients as well. So right now, it's all about for me. It's all about human resources, and we just had open enrollment. Again, anyone who's in HR knows that is it's no joke. And then technology. Technology is just for me. It's everything right now. Again, at small organizations like ours, I feel like people wear a lot of hats. HR tends to get a lot dumped on them. I'm fortunate. I feel excited when I have a lot of things thrown at me. So I've had the opportunity to really own our technology, make sure that what we're using internally works, but also that we're keeping up with the expectation that as we're consulting our clients, we're also staying ahead of, or at least trying to stay ahead of technology and what's going on in the world. Um, so yeah, and then like talent acquisition is a huge area too, right? Because there is this strange economy that we're living through at the moment where um, government statistics come out, they tell us everything's looking good, soft landing, we're feeling good, but then the other side of that is there's a lot of people who are either underemployed or unemployed
mm,
who have been out of work for a long time, or who are still recovering from the effects of the pandemic. And
Yeah.
so kind of understanding that, a number on a spreadsheet isn't necessarily going to tell you the whole story. And again, I consider it to be my job to know these things and
Yeah.
to be on top of them. So yeah, there's a lot. That was my long-winded way of explaining to you what I'm up to.
Well, you actually you did say a lot, and there is so many different directions I would like to go. Um, the first direction is you used a phrase. I took it upon myself to be the guru in that area, and that then you said I think that you might have used pole vaulted or something like that. Um, the point I want to just kind of drive home is that it sounds like you took the initiative to to see, hey, there is a trend, something is happening, and someone has to be the expert in this arena in order to help the organization be successful, and that ultimately led to a good success for you. My question is, for those listening right now, what do you do to be able to see those trends? Like how do you focus in on a trend area when there's so much noise going on in the world? Social media, everything is coming at you all the time. Like how do you find that piece where you say, no, this is where I need to put my energy?
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack. That's a great question. I think I think about work a lot. So I think that maybe isn't always the most healthy thing, but I think about where there may be gaps in the organization, how that could be negatively impacting some of the folks that I work with and that I care about, how that can be impacting our revenue, right? Because, as much as um, I'm an advocate for employees and I care about well-being, I also understand that my existence and many of their existence depends on us making money. We're not a nonprofit organization, so there needs to be decisions that are made that with that in mind. So thinking about work a lot leads me to potentially realize where there could be a gap, right? And so then you need to have the audience at your organization who's going to listen to you when you feel that there's a gap. And so I'm saying it this way because I know I don't want to make too many assumptions that anyone can just raise their hand and say, "Hey, I want to be the guru." You need someone on the other end who's going to be like, "Oh, does this does solve a problem for us," or I can understand. And honestly, Alex, I've probably raised my hand and had people say no to me way more than say yes. Um, so that I think this one happened to fit. The timing was right. We needed it. It was critical, and so that led to a lot of other opportunity for myself. But I think I've probably always raised my hand
Yeah.
and and said I can help with this, or I think I can help with this, and here's how.
I, I,
And
no,
yeah,
I believe, but what you're saying is absolutely true. I mean, so you brought up the point that you know yes, you may want to raise your hand, but not everyone is positioned well to raise their hand. Um, but the only way to get positioned well to raise your hand is to be raising your hand. You you have to be seen as the individual who wants to contribute. You have to be seen as someone who has influence. I mean, just the fact of like you talked about, absolutely there are. I talk about this in my book, Relationships at Work. There's a reality that organizations only have so many resources, only so many resources. They can't put money everywhere, money, time, energy, employees. They can't put employees everywhere, right? um, and you know what, you have a great idea, but you're not the only one with a great idea. Like there's a hundred other people that have great ideas too, fighting for resources. So you have to make sure you're intentional about building the relationships, building the influence, so that when you do have an idea you can bring to the table, it has a fair shot of being considered versus just saying, hey, I have an idea, I gave it to them, but they didn't accept it. Or the other person over there going to lunch with the person, and understanding what their needs are, like tying it to their outcomes and their desires. Like this stuff, it matters.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And and I'll add to that too. I think this may be controversial, is not probably too strong of a word, but this may be divisive for some folks. I think raising your hand and automatically expecting that if someone says yes, that you're going to get some immediate return on that. I do think that that can lead to folks not wanting to choose you, right?
Mm,
Oh well, yeah, Mike raised his hand, but well, what's he going to want in return if he
mm,
delivers on this, right? And of course, there needs to be an agreement between company and employee. When they bring something to the table, they should be rewarded. That's probably a whole nother conversation, but I do think that as an individual, if you're bringing an idea to the table and you want to try something, or you want to do something and it's going to benefit you in a non-monetary way, maybe for your career, for your experience, I think raising your hand and delivering on that has more value in the long term than it does in the short term. And so, I was speaking to a friend recently who their their supervisor left, and they're fairly high up at a large, well-known organization. And we were talking through it. He knows my business, so he was asking a little bit of career advice, and I was like, "Well, just do it. Just do whatever they need to fill the gap in the immediate." And his response is, "Well, I'm not going to do it for free." And there are a lot of people who would agree with that, and I
mhm,
I can't I can't knock that if that's the way you want to approach it. I'm not saying there's a right or wrong. It's just a difference in style.
mhm.
I probably would be like, "What do you need me to do?" And then we can talk about this in 6 months or 3 months, or whatever it is.
I'm with you 100% actually. And where I sit on this is I think people should reconsider the phraseology around I'm not going to do it for free, because I don't really believe you're doing it for free. You're doing it for, I mean, at the bare minimum, experience. You are now gaining the experience. You're gaining the ability to talk about that story, how you proposed an idea, how it was adopted, how it was integrated, the success and result that came along with it. That ultimately you can then mentor someone else. You can coach someone else. You can get hired for another job. It's an interview, a great interview answer you may have. I I, I don't feel like I just don't feel like you're do I know there's a push for like, if you don't pay me, I'm not doing it. But it's almost like the gas tank, right? Like you you have to go to the cashier. You got to pay your money first. You got to put in the time, the effort, you got to pay it, and then you can get your gas. It doesn't happen the other way around. I mean, in most places nowadays, it doesn't happen the other way around.
That's a great analogy. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think there's that fine line, and believe me, there are definitely people out there who have raised their hand and said, "What do you need from me?" And 10, 12, 18 months goes by and there's been no change in their situation officially, right? And they are now feeling taken advantage of, and they probably are being taken advantage of. And so I do understand why there would be that mindset. um and it's finding there's so many variables that come into it, right? The person who you're raising your hand to, well, you have to really trust them.
Mm,
They have to trust you. You have to have built a relationship where you can be authentic and maybe even blunt at times about like what this is going to mean.
mhm.
So that again, this is where, if you're talking about these types of scenarios in a vacuum, it's really difficult
Yeah.
because no two situations. It's actually my like the best HR mentorship advice I ever received is no two situations are the same.
Yeah.
You hear people talk about precedent and use those types of words, but the truth is no two people are the same. No two jobs are exactly the same. No situations are going to be the same. So that's where as much as we want to provide broad advice to folks,
Hmm.
I think we have to fairly recognize that the situation may not warrant it.
I mean, again, you're right. Everything is contextual, right? Um, and overseeing HR. It's funny actually. It's like I used to oversee HR for an organization, um, and I was brought up to understand precedent setting. My background is also in National Park Service. Like, if you do something, it's not what's happening now that you got to think about. It's what's happening 15, 20, 30 years from now. So, so present setting is really important. Um, and at the same time, I can't tell you how many times that I received an incident, and just initially you're like, oh, well, this is that, right? Until you do your homework and you're like, it's not the same.
Yeah.
And so it's almost what you're saying is, from a broader perspective, from a leadership perspective, it's really important. It's really important to slow down. Again, this kind of been the theme I've been talking about with a lot of my coaching clients, is to just slow down. When someone gives you something, and okay, there are things that at a certain level you shouldn't be weighing in on. That's just a reality. There's people who should be weighing in. But if someone brings you something that has a level of significance, the outcome has a level of significance, you really should probably slow down and understand something before you just make a decision, versus saying, oh, yep, here you go, next, because you don't know the ramifications.
Yeah, no, you really nail on the head, Alex, because I think that is not just in human resources, but if we broaden it and talk about leadership, jumping jumping to a conclusion, or making it a checkbox. And I'm a process driven individual, so I could easily checkbox things, and it's one of the things that I constantly work on, is making sure that I am taking a minute to assess the situation. And not everything needs to be responded to immediately, right? Like, you don't have to fire
Ooh,
off that email.
yeah.
A lot of times what I'll do is I'll write an email response with my gut reaction, but hold on actually sending it, if that's the way you're communicating with folks. But I think taking a deep breath and being like, okay, am I reading this situation correctly? Better yet, like having a conversation with someone
Mm.
before coming to a decision. Those little things can make all the difference in the world, rather than firing off that email.
So, I mean, just looking at the type of person you are, I know that some things in life have shaped who you are, whether it be education, whether it be just life experience, and so on and so forth. Have you ever been in a situation where just something difficult happened, something hard happened? Um, and how did that ultimately impact or shape who you are today, the leader you are today?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and I've probably had quite a few difficult things happen, if I'm being honest. But I would probably go back. You had mentioned West Elm Variety, so that was literally a convenience store that I began my career running and operating, and owning. And I started that when I was 22 years old. Um, and most 22-year-olds are just getting out of college, maybe making a little bit of money, having
Hmm.
having a lot of fun. And I started that business in 2006 and ran it for 8 years. And that was through the 2008, 2009 crisis. So
Oh,
there was
wow.
there was um, a lot of external factors at the time.
Hmm.
It was a 7 day a week job. Always, we were open from 7 a.m. until 9 p.m. It was literally a local convenience store. I mean, talk about, I always tell this story and I'm like, yeah, it's about as unique as it can get, for someone who ended up where I am now. But the difficult, to answer your question, the difficult part of that job, and at the time, it was very difficult. I think I had burned out at a very young age because I was on all the time, right? Wake up in the morning, go there. I operated the store while I had my job at Le Cordon Bleu, and then for a little while at Hollister. So this was not that long ago. And I was still going there before work and after work every day. It was a lot, and I got to a point of like I need this to be done. I need to be done with this. It
Mhm.
was great. It taught me a lot, but I was really, really unhappy both in my um, professional life and my personal life. And when I got to Hollister, to give Hollister a great plug, because we talk about like bringing your whole self to work all the time. And it's one of the things that our CEO, Kip, talks about, and has been talking about for years. If you're unhappy in any part of your life, you're most likely going to be unhappy in all of it, right? So I knew that I needed to move on, and it wasn't a flip of the switch. This was a long process to sell the store and to move on from it.
Mhm.
Um, but it was probably like about an 18 to 24-month stretch of feeling burnt out, but not knowing how to actually get out of it, right? And
Yeah.
fortunately, this is where I can say like I've a wonderful family, a wonderful partner. We we worked through it. They knew I was unhappy. I mean, I will tell you, I could laugh. I don't know if anyone who ever went into that store will ever listen to this, but like I was miserable. Like you talk about like what not to do in customer service, like, and I consider myself to be a fairly personable person, but I would be like, what do you want? Like, because I just didn't want to deal with it anymore. And that is the level that um, unhappiness can drag you down to. So I would say overcoming that, but this is where, to take it one step further, I went back to college and I got my graduate degree during that time. Um, and I thought at the time I wanted to work in higher education. So I really targeted going after jobs in university settings. Um, and I as unhappy as I was, it helped me build resilience
Mm.
and really just be like, okay, I cannot control that situation at the moment, but I
Yeah.
can control this one.
Mhm.
And so I went back and I educated myself and I started like, okay, what's it going to be like to go get a corporate job and work in an office, and got in that mindset. And it took a long time though. So when I became a recruiter, I would interact with a lot of folks who had been trying to make the transition from either food service or retail into more 9 to 5 office jobs. And this is where I can say like it was really hard, but it helped me turn into what I consider to be like a very empathetic recruiter,
Yeah.
because people would tell me their story and I'd be like, hold on, I've been there. Like
Yeah.
I hear you on that. And so yeah, that I think that time period was it was good for me, right? Because then you get to a point, every difficult situation, I believe, this is my belief. I don't know if it's fact, but every difficult situation you look back on and you can say, well, I wouldn't be who I am or where I am if it wasn't for that situation, right? Could there have been a different path? Yes, of course. Who knows where I would be though if I took that path, or if things had been easier, right? I still, and this is where I'll put my disclosure in, like I still feel like very privileged, even with some of the things that I've been through. And my life has not been. I've not had to overcome so many of the terrible and tough things that a lot of folks have. So I think from a professional standpoint, having to build resilience is a real healthy thing. and my advice to someone who's going through a tough time would be like, there is there is brighter days ahead, and hopefully you can look back and be like, okay, what did I learn from this situation?
I absolutely love everything you said, and I have so many different places I wanted to go based on everything you said. Um, it's funny. I was talking about my tattoo. One of my tattoos I got early on when I was younger. It actually is a story about how you're a ship going through a terrible storm, um, and just as you think you're just not going to make it, if you steadfast just a little bit longer, the storm is going to end. Just a little bit longer, because every storm ends, right? So I love what you just talked about that, and the building of resilience. I think is required. Um, I was speaking at a conference actually, and someone went up and was talking to the audience about how resilience is bad. You shouldn't have to have resilience. And people, especially women and people of color, who, you shouldn't have to don't worry about resilience anymore. Just the reality is that you just need to have your time, and it's real, and don't worry about getting over it. Just if you need to ball up and cry, ball up and cry. And so I'm like, sure, sounds good. Everyone was clapping their hands, snapping their fingers. And I was like, well, look, let's just deal with reality. Okay. You can say all day that things shouldn't happen, but let's look about what should happens, what does happen. There is discrimination, there is bias, unconscious and conscious bias. And I don't think if you don't have resilience to overcome what does happen, then I think you do end up in a fetal position. I don't think you end up reaching your goals. I think you have to be able to push forward, because again, every storm has a conclusion. You also mentioned a word that I actually love. You talked about mindset, and I want to just bring up a topic really quickly. How important mindset is. I so I'm now in a phase where GPS Leadership Solutions, my organization, um, is growing. We're doing much more consulting, much more training, much more executive coaching, and I'm doing more speaking. And I'm talking to my business partner, and we've been thinking through what needs to happen in order to level up to the next level. And we realize what the problem is. The problem is me. Even when I was talking to him, I said, hey, look, I'm a former chief of staff. As a chief of staff, we had to make sure that everything runs on time. I need to know what's going on. Not like barking, but just saying these are things that are really important. And he says, Alex, you're not a chief of staff anymore. You got to stop thinking about it. You're the CEO of a company. You're an executive coach. Like, you can't be having your hand on everything. And just that quick nudge, like, oh my God, I am still in my brain consider myself a chief of staff. One of my clients, um, phenomenal, powerful woman, when she in her mindset was, I can either be a powerful executive or a mother. And once we work past that mindset where she's like, no, I can do both. I can do both. Another client of mine, extremely successful executive, and the mindset of, I got to work the rest of my life because I got too much debt. And once we challenged that mindset, and he was like, oh, shoot, I guess I can do some things differently to I don't have to work until I die. Right. And so I want to really quickly ask you, like, how important is that mindset piece as you are positioning yourself for your next opportunities?
It's very important. I mean, I think you talking about mindset and asking that question makes me have to think about what is my mindset. Um, and and so I think like that reflection on how you're showing up and what you want. Um, I think it's critical. I mean, there's like, if my mindset is like, okay, I want to be CHRO of a large organization, right? Or I want to just learn a new skill in 2024, and that's my mindset. If I truly am showing up in a way where I'm going to do that no matter what, right? Like that is going to be my focus. Well, then I need to be thinking about it. I need to be writing it down. I need to be telling people about it.
Mm.
And those things are just like the little pieces that need to go into place, because I mean, I don't know about you, but I can't believe it's 2024. Like time goes by really fast, right? And the older you get, the more you realize how fast time goes by. And if
Mhm.
you are not really zeroed in on what you want, and if you don't know what you want, um, you're gonna get caught in the weeds, and you're never actually. I mean, there's like sometimes things just happen, but most of the time, like your mindset is gonna be is what's gonna drive that. So, I think when you and I had spoken before, Alex, I had mentioned imposter syndrome to you.
Mm.
And I think as I get deeper into my career, I never realized how big, or how common it is, I should say, that
Yeah.
people at all levels, but at
Yep.
executive levels too,
Mhm.
have that imposter syndrome. Actually, you had emailed me about being on this podcast, and I was like, did you email me by mistake? Remember that? And I truly, I was being sincere. I was like, are you sure you want to talk to me? Um, and I think like that is very common. And so having that mindset of like, no, like this is something that I want and can accomplish, and being specific about it, I think it makes a huge difference.
uh, Thank you, one, for responding back and becoming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
and you said one thing. I won't harp on this one. I know we have to start wrapping up. You have to jump on the phone with someone, some famous celebrity. We won't say who that person is, but they have a couple movies coming out. Actually, side note, sorry, I was doing the one person the other day, because I have a trend. I always say this person is jumping off to do something cool. And then I was like, oh, this person's meeting with the mayor of this big city. And before they got off, like, everyone, please know I am not meeting with the mayor. If any of my staff are on here, I'm not. I was like, oh, okay, yeah. Maybe that's not a joke to everybody.
I
um,
appreciate the clarification.
um, but you just mentioned something that I think everyone needs to take time to do, but it's really hard, especially to do it on your own. Is to figure out what you want. It seems like such an easy question, but it's very difficult. Every time I begin a relationship with any of my coaching clients, I ask them basically that same question, like, what do you want? Um, and the initial response is one of a few. It's, oh, I don't want anything. I'm okay. I don't need much more in life. I'm already doing well. Well, yeah, you want stuff. Don't act like that. Or if they want something, they feel like they may be greedy. Oh, I've already had all this. All right, I mean, I don't need more. Or if I want something that someone else can't have it. Or they want something, but it's not actually what they want. It's what they saw their friend or their colleague or someone on social media having. And so, well, if they have it, then I must also want it. So I'll just, I'll say I want that. But the problem is that is if you do that, if you go after those things and you're focused and you're detailed and you have resilience and you're gonna get it. You're gonna achieve that. You're gonna get what you want, quote unquote, but then you're not gonna be happy because it wasn't what you wanted, it was what the other person wanted. So that's such a deep question that it's really hard for people to actually kind of uncover on their own. Again, that's why I think executive coaching is really important and things like that. But I just want to underscore what you just said. I'll provide you any space. I want to back up and say, is there anything you'd like to say as we begin to wrap up this conversation together?
You know, I think just in general, um, a piece of advice. I actually repeated this recently at a company wide meeting that we were having, as I was talking about one of my direct reports who is just constantly impressing me with their ability to learn leadership and learn how to fill those gaps, right, at the company. Um, and it feels like a very this saying this always feels a little weird, but like I talk about being an adult and how being an adult a lot of times means doing things that you don't necessarily want to do. Um, and then when I was speaking about this individual, I said being a leader means doing things that you don't always want to do, but no one knows it.
Mm,
And
wow.
so I think that's maybe a lot for people to think about, but um, I do feel like I've always personally raised my hand for things that, like, yeah, they maybe would benefit me in my career and my learning. I wasn't always excited about them. Um, and I constantly find myself having to do that. And Alex, as much as I've like this has been fantastic and I love it, my level of anxiety and nerves coming on this podcast with you was like a little high. I don't love speaking in front of crowds. I'm not this dynamic public speaker, and but I think like just pushing yourself even just a little bit can go a really long way in your career. And so that would be my final thoughts are like, if there's that thing that's coming up that you really don't want to do or don't want to deal with or that you're nervous about, just like give yourself a little nudge and it will pay dividends. So that would be it.
Oh, that is phenomenal on so many different levels. Um, everything you said is phenomenal, and I want to that dividend piece. It's funny how we utilize that in investing, right? Like you you do you put some money into an account, and over time that money grows and it produces dividends, and you can hopefully one day, if not live off of it, it supplements your living. It's a really positive thing to have. um, and the same thing is for our life. Even those things that you think are small, giving yourself the push to talk in front of that crowd, giving yourself the push to try that project that you were worried about doing. When Michael talks about giving yourself that, if there's something you want to do, and and just give yourself that nudge, right? Even if it doesn't produce that tsunami tomorrow, man, the compound interest, the dividends that it's going to pay out years from now, because you're going to say, oh wow, I did that. What is next? You're going to take that experience, the emotion, the whether you quote unquote successful or you didn't successful, or you learned something, it will pay off in the future. I figure there's no action, there's no progress that doesn't pay off, I believe. Again, thank you, Michael, so much for coming on today. I appreciate everything you share with us, all your stories, your advice, your willingness to push the envelope on some issues. I appreciate your candor. I know that's something that our audience is always talking about. Just the fact that we can have real conversations on here, and not always have to be worried about how is this going to come off, or maybe just toting the line. So I appreciate everything you've done. And for all of you out there, look, this is the year. This is 2024 right now. This is the year of greatness. I've been telling everyone I've been talking to, everyone I speak to this year, this should be, will be your best year so far. This 20, don't think about what happened last year. Don't think about what happened next year. This year, what can you do? How can you be present in this year and do what Michael said? Be focused, figure out what you want, get it done, write it down, talk about it, whatever you can do whatever you can this year to make sure this is your best year yet. Do that. I promise you, you'll be happy. This year, I'm committing to coaching 12 executives, and 12 individuals who want to get that next level, and want to do so without having to leave their family behind. And that's where I'm being called for right now, because I have my little 5.5, 5 3/4 month-year-old son, and I want to help leaders get to those next levels while also not having to feel like they have to leave their families behind. So again, if you want to interested in coaching, please visit us at gpsleadership.org. Today, I'm looking forward to hearing from all of you. You know what I'm going to say. If you found something value from this show today, don't keep it to yourself. Don't just look back, reach back, bring someone else to the table. Click that like, click that share. Make sure you comment, ask your questions. As always, I encourage you to stay strong, stay positive, and definitely stay moving. See ya. Thanks for listening to The Executive Appeal with Alex Trumbull. I invite you to follow The Executive Appeal wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow me, your host, Alex Trumbull, across all socials or via email for exclusive webinars, courses, and speaking engagements on continued topics of executive leadership. So until next time, stay strong, stay positive, and definitely stay moving.